Hello, this is Jonathan Matthew. My legal last name is Spears. I go by Fibonojji also. This is really me just documenting. I've called the Malibu police. I'm here in Malibu, California. One of the things that the homeless deal with is harassment by people. And a lot of times people think that it's about mental illness, or they like to fill in their own narrative, their own Rachel Maddow narrative on the homeless world. But really, homelessness is about people who don't have jobs, who are unemployed, who don't have food, who don't have water, who don't have basic services. So like Wi-Fi. So when they close the libraries because of COVID, obviously that impacts our employment, so we go hungry. Now, people like Malibu people, well, when a fire comes, they just rebuild with an insurance policy. And then the things I've learned by just kind of hanging out here. Now this is, in the homeless world, in all candor, this is me kind of doing my Anthony Bourdain, like, in the homeless world, there are people that care about the homeless, but the problem is those people are often re-objectified by that layer. So it's like you can be, if you were in a fight and the cops didn't beat you up, if you didn't catch anything at the hospital, then when you go to a nursing home or maybe a place to kind of chill out, and maybe a rehab place, maybe you're objectified and hurt by the rehab people. And one of the reasons why I left Durango, Colorado, was because their state-run homeless services, where they were the things they were doing to the homeless community were just downright illegal. And I'm like, I was brand new to homelessness in that era, and I'm like, we can't allow citizens to be re-objectified, especially at religious feedings. So in Durango, Colorado, there's a place called Manna Mountain. Now this is Malibu, and I love Malibu, California. And Malibu is a wonderful place, but a lot of rich people live here. And when you have a lot of rich people that live here, the motion becomes, or the, hey David, will you just not talk for a second? Dave. Sorry. So I'm taking a rare opportunity, because I don't have a phone, I don't have a cell phone, to say hello. I'm Jonathan. I'm out here in Malibu, and literally what we go through on any given day to just exist. And when you live among like the mountains and things like that, like remember when King David in the Bible he said, I would flee to the mountains. So a lot of times when people go through economic issues, if they lose their home, if they lose their family, they inherently go to the mountains, like even King David did in the Bible. Well, we have to look at the way those mountain towns legislate and their jurisdiction. And do they think they can just throw our homeless tents away? Well, in Los Angeles, when they threw our homeless tents away, they didn't throw my particular tent away, but when I was in jail on a misdemeanor here in LA County, on a misdemeanor, an article came out that in LA, that LA was sued for, I think, $1.3 million because the people they were saying, hey, you can't throw away our property. So the homeless narrative is about our property rights, our civil liberties. As American citizens, do we have constitutional rights? And that's a big part of a lot of my federal actions that I'm trying to, when I say I'm going to sue cities, it's can we hold Malibu, California accountable when they deny a restraining order against a homeless person when the CVS employee prevents them from panhandling? So is panhandling legal? Now, you may not care about panhandling, but you may not be homeless yet. Well, you better care about panhandling laws, and you better care about how Malibu does it. You better care how Durango does it. Because if you don't, if you ignore the homeless, then now that's your narrative. And you're like, well, as long as I have a property, I'm okay, right, Jonathan? I mean, if I just have property, then that's all that matters. Well, our Constitution is written based upon liberties, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So life is above property. But when they talk to you in the homeless world, they want to talk about cell phones, identification cards. Where's your ID? They want to talk to you like police officers. What's your ID? Where are you from? Can we identify you? Can we put you in a jail? Can we deny you a jury trial? Can we put transient on the ticket and just deny you your 6th, 7th, and 8th Amendment? So if you're listening to this and you're like, well, who's this Jonathan guy out here in Malibu talking about Anthony Bourdain? And by the way, I just saw that documentary. It was amazing. But my homeless life, even at 5.5 years, is still very difficult. Like even today, at a friend's house, you know, I wake up to 3 Mexicans really in confrontational mode, and that's every day. Every day something happens where property owners hire illegal immigrants to protect their property and lives from American citizens. So we have a July 2021 world. We have where property rights matter more than constitutional rights. Americans are not given the jury trials. We're not given 6th, 7th, and 8th Amendments. We're denied bails. Everything that the Constitution says people should get or citizens should get, homeless people aren't getting. But guess who's getting those rights, those inalienable rights? Illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants. And living here, and I don't live in this RV, but this is one of those guys that I can kind of stay here for a day or two, and then he kind of has his business partner, can't really figure that one out. You know, there's always that other person that kind of orbits, you know, and I've been through that dynamic, and I don't want to go too much into the homeless dynamic, but 5.5 years and the people you meet and the way you get abused, and it's a very difficult life, but it's foundationally built upon poverty and not being able to work. Like yesterday, my friend enabled me to literally put a resume together. Well, I haven't been able to put a resume together for 5.5 years. And then the library's closed. So when the library's closed, how do homeless people get jobs? And then if you just start thinking about America from the homeless perspective and start using words like constitutional rights are eroding, and that America is losing this war on China, and China has invaded through our court system. And nobody wants to talk about China or Asian countries invading America through our courts. Well, how do you know that's happening? Well, our courts will act like communist courts. They will deny 6th and 7th and 8th Amendments. American citizens are denied jury trials. We're unable to get into to libraries. Meanwhile, the bourgeoisie people who live in properties or have houses, these people just think property rights, property rights, property rights, property rights, and they're trained to think about the election. All they want to talk about is the election and Trump. But let's talk about like the months since November. Let's talk about, well, what did Biden actually do? Well, the first thing he did was he went after the oil companies to get their land. Well, where's the oil and gas people going, hey, we need to start talking about federal lands and state lands? Well, if you're a part of that discussion, email me and let me know, and I'll help you in your federal endeavors to help oil companies keep their private lands so that their lands are not eaten up by federal interest. Well, in this case, our federal interests are which countries are invading us? Well, obviously China and Mexico. And most importantly, we're losing our constitutional rights. And what does that mean? That means when you get abused, you got to fight your way out of it. Well, in America, the Chinese will not tolerate that. They want to put muzzles on our faces. They want to tell us where to stand, and they want to film us. Well, film me talking about my constitutional rights where I'm literally working. I'm filming this. I mean, how much illegal immigration? And you can email me. Email me at americano417@gmail.com. My name's Jonathan Fibonojji. Email me at americano417@gmail.com. Just like the coffee. americano417@gmail.com. How much illegal immigration goes into one house in Malibu? And do Americans need those jobs? Yeah. The problem is I'm more concerned about a 5150 charge, which is illegal constitutionally, than that fucker is in being deported. That difference between 1970 America, where homelessness was about alcoholism, today it's about communism, and Americans simply do not have access to their cities and their courts. So help me sue these cities, whether you're on the net neutrality side of things, whether you care about the 4th Amendment, whether you care about the federal system, whether you care about constitutional rights. Maybe you just want to send your kid to an American school, a university, and you want your kids to be around at least 4 or 5 Americans. Now, America is the only country that gives our universities to other countries. When our other countries are hostile to us, other countries use our universities like UCLA and UC Berkeley to invade us. So we're getting invaded by the Chinese through our courts, through our universities, because what you should really say is, Jonathan, I loved your video. Yeah, I think constitutional rights are important. And I'm sorry you had to fight. And I'm sorry you had to fucking fight Mexicans every day, but you do live in California. And in California, there's 53 stars on that flag. How many stars are on your flag? Email me, Jonathan, Americano417@gmail.com. How many stars are on your flag? Because in my star, it's 50. I'm from Oklahoma. So one of those stars is from Oklahoma. Colorado. I love California. But these people, there's 59 stars on their flag. So when I say you have to be here legally and you could be deported, and I'll use my American court system to use my 6th Amendment to subpoena your fucking, and yeah, noise complaints in Malibu at the very least. If you want to help my federal case, email me and let me know, because communism is not going to stop because we put on muzzles. In fact, the more muzzles they see, the more happy they are about communism. And in closing, I just saw Anthony Bourdain's, what do you want to call it? I mean, it wasn't a documentary, but it was an amazing story about, well, kind of what I'm doing. Like, I mean, he did it with food, but I'm kind of the accidental constitutional guy, because I just woke up and realized that my country is not 1985. That this is the year 2021 and COVID laws and people with 59 stars on their American flag. That's normal. Well, words like democracy, those are good words, right? Democracy. Oklahoma is a good word. Colorado is a good word. Public lands, public spaces versus federal lands. And if you're in Colorado, the land you think is private today could be federalized under COVID-22 tomorrow. At the very least, you want to contact me and say, Jonathan, how can I protect my lands against COVID-21? And I'm going to say immigration control and helping me succeed in your town's court. And if I can't get a court clerk to give me a hearing in federal court, then you have communism in your court, whether you like it or not. All right, I'm Jonathan Fibonojji. Sorry for kind of like the boom, boom, boom. But seriously, homeless 5.5 years. Most of my friends and family have kind of abandoned me. I know how to be poor now. I've gone through the first 2 or 3 years, which were desperate years. But on this journey, learning to protect and defend this country, there is not another America. Vietnam happened, and we're about to see Vietnam in America, because 80% of the people you see today, guys, will not be from this country. Their granddad was not from this country, and they have 59 stars on their flag emotionally and mentally. Well, there's an impact when you have 59, when you have people who view the flag with 59 stars, and some people like me who read the Constitution, and we see things like constitutional law, California Constitution's Article 19, Section 1, 2, 3, and 4. Can somebody please email me at americano417@gmail.com and send me a picture of California's Constitution, Article 19, Section 1, 2, 3, and 4. Article 19, Sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. Send me a picture of that and say, Jonathan, how can they honor the California Constitution and have this many tenured professors or this many city and state employees? How can they do that? And I'm going to say it's because, well, you need to read George Orwell's 1984. You need to get into the fight to defend democracy, because these fuckers, they only think in terms of money and dick. That's all they want. Their whole reference point is literally piggery. It's like property, money without working, and dick. And that's its own discussion of how LA is so different than from, say, 1980, and how we all love temptation sometimes, but temptation goes into sin, and then sin becomes demonicism. And demonicism in LA in the year 2021 and immigration control. And again, there are some people who don't read their Bible, true? See, he says the animal. See, he's been reading George Orwell. I mean, this is an illegal immigrant from Mexico. I think he's doing something to himself down there. He's mocking me because he doesn't think I have actual access to my court. Now, that's kind of an example. So do I have access to Malibu's court in federal court to just see if you're legal? I think I do. And I also think I have a 14th Amendment. So the words of the day are save America and save democracy, because this is a real war. And in closing, about the Black Lives Matter, my journey, black people have fed me, and God has provided for me by some of the most mysterious ways. And God has been faithful to me, and the role that black people have been to me and how they've ministered to me. But what we're talking about Americans losing constitutional rights, black people have been going through this for since 1880. So white people are waking up to the slave system that we kind of created. And George Orwell talks about that. The Bible talks about that. And even Matthew 25, if you're a Christian, and I hope you're a Christian. If you're not, we could email me your Bible questions, because yeah, democracies end, and I want people to go to heaven. And when I'm not preaching Jesus, I'm trying to save this country, and I'm trying to save this country so that I could physically exist in it, because I'm surrounded, like David says, like by bees. I mean, by the people who think it's still 1970s, by, you know, again, if it looks like a pig, it eats like a pig, it walks like a pig. If you pull all of its clothes off and it's a pig, and it only talks about money and dick, it may be a pig. So read George Orwell, read some of those parables from Jesus, because the end times are real, and I want you guys to go to heaven. So I'm Jonathan from Malibu, California. Send me an email. Always let me know where you're at, and then go see Anthony Bourdain, and then we can talk about that later. God bless you guys. And then I hate the number 6, so let me, how do I close out? And not, so my next steps. I may go back to Durango. I mean, how do you not love that? And during these 5 years, it's been going from San Francisco to LA, San Francisco to LA, San Francisco, LA. This is my 7th time to live in LA. You're like, why don't you just stay in San Francisco? Well, because it's very difficult to be homeless. Hey, I'm not done. Give me 40. I know. And just even this right here, I'm borrowing this guy's phone. One aspect about homelessness that is difficult, other than the tribalism, like San Francisco is so tribal. And when people think of San Francisco, they think of it like 1970 or 1980 San Francisco. Well, San Francisco is the year 2021. It's July 21st right now, I believe. If you go to San Francisco, 70% of the people you see in San Francisco are not American citizens. So their flag has like 92 stars. And there is such an anti-Americanism. And when you have anti-Americanism, you have anti-constitutionalism. And words like, do Americans have the 14th Amendment? And do you, reader or viewer, do you even know what the 14th Amendment is? Because you need to know what the 14th Amendment is. And if you live in California, Google the California Constitution, Article 19, Sections 1, 2, 3, 4, because this is America. And the last thing I would want to see is for there to be a Vietnam come to America through Asiatic coolieism. And that's what the California Constitution calls communism, Asiatic coolieism, in the year 2021, COVID-19.